What type of dogs do you like?
And again, the right type of dog for you is the kind that you like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not real colorblind. Most of my dog are blue tick walker cross dogs that go back to Van stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Whether Van bred them or I've bred them myself that go back. About the only thing you're not going to see in my kennel is plot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with plot, because I've hunted behind some good ones and I've seen some good ones, and they just don't work for me.
Mm-hmm. What is it? I haven't hunted around enough dogs to really be able to distinguish characteristics. But I hear that a lot. The two people, everyone's got a preference. Oh, I don't like walkers. I don't like blue ticks. I don't like plots. But plots get it the most, I think.
So my experience with them, I hunted with some guys that ran them Pocahontas plots from back east, and they were just a little too growly for me. They just seem to fight each other than fight a bear or a lion. I just don't have time for that.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm gonna staple them up, I want it to be from a bear and a lion, not from each other. God, I got growly enough problems as it is, when a female comes into heat. I don't want it all the other time too, but like I say, that there's good ones out there. I know there are, because I've hunted behind a few.
Yeah.
There was a guy that came hunting with Van last year from Oklahoma that had some different plots that I don't remember what they were. They were a bigger dog, bigger than them Pocahontas, and they didn't have a growly bone in them. Mm-hmm. And I actually like those. I've got a pup out there that's her dad's a plot.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you can still distinguish between breeds based on traits? They say back in the day, blue ticks were really, cold nosed and a walker was fast or whatever. Do you think you can still do that? Most people out here sort of running mixed up dogs, I would say.
I think so. I can see the colder nose on the blue tick side, and I can see the speed on the walker side. And, when you cross it, it makes a pretty good cross, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a little female out there that her mom's a registered clover dog, and her dad goes back to my aunt's stuff, and she ain't fast at all, but man, she's pretty cold nosed to be a pup. But again, the right dog for you is the right dog for you. There's no right or wrong.
Well, your dogs look pretty similar. There's a lot of shared traits between them, I'd say.
Yeah.
What's your methodology for breeding?
Breed the best of the best.
Best of the best.
In theory, Van talked me into. He had a female that I wanted to breed, so bad I couldn't stand it. He was pretty low on dog power going into winter. He said, "No, Hannah, I can't let you breed her because it'll put me down another dog going into the lion season." He said, "I know where her sister's at, that she can breed." So I gathered her up and we bred her. I kept her here for, I don't know, 5 or 6 months before she came into heat. I was not impressed at all.
Mm-hmm.
I had called him and I said, I don't see what you see in this dog. I don't know if I even want to breed her. He said, "I promise you it'll be a good cross." I said, "All right." Because if she'd have been mine, I probably wouldn't have fed her.
Mm-hmm.
Bred her, man, every one of them pups turned out to be jam-up pups.
Really? So it was in the genetics, and it didn't, it doesn't necessarily have to manifest in that dog as long as they're carrying those genetics.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say it's always that way.
Yeah.
Because in theory, you breed the best of the best. Just because you do that, don't mean they always come out to be the best pups, but that's the plan, anyways.
What type of consistency do you see in your litter in terms of dogs turning out?
Again, that's a tough one to answer because everybody's opinion of what a good dog is different. You know what I mean?
But in your opinion?
My opinion, from what I've kept out of what I've bred over the years, I've kept 75%.
That's pretty good. Yeah. You hear about sort of low numbers, like 5 out of 10 or something like that, and it's something I've talked about with other guys in terms of, I don't know why that is in hound hunting, where you talk about the security dogs with the shepherds or bird dogs, and they seem to be able to get a much higher percentage. I don't know if it's a more complex thing that you're breeding for with hounds. Or...
I think, and again, everybody does things different, but, from my experience, guys give up on them too quick.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. How long do you like to keep a dog?
You know, I don't think you'll fully see the potential in a dog until they're 5 or 6, honestly. I'm not saying I'd keep a dog that long, but, I think if you don't give a dog till they're 3, and honestly, you ought to see something in them, at a year old.
Yeah.
But it may not be exactly what you're wanting, but I think as long as you're seeing something in them, I think you need to give them a chance. And maybe guys may say I keep dogs too long, but they're not feeding them, I am.
Yeah, and do what you want to do, right? At the end of the day, my limited experience with dogs, has led me to think that you've got a lot of leeway in influencing how they behave, developing traits, developing good traits, doing bad traits, and if you put them in the right circumstances often enough, it seems like I think you have a good sway in that.
Yep. The more game you show them, the better they're going to be. The only thing you can't teach them is how to have a cold nose. They're either going to have it or they're not.
Yeah. So we talked about that with one of your dogs who was it he or she?
Ranger, that red dog of mine. He doesn't go back to any of my stuff or Van's stuff, either one. I got him from Van as an 8-week-old puppy, but man, he's got more heart than any dog I've ever owned. He tries so hard and has for years and years. Just tried a cold trail, and I get so frustrated with him because he'd be 2 miles behind on a cold trail. Just because he's so independent, he tries to smell it himself. He just couldn't. But on a jump race, he wasn't going to get outran. On a mean bear, he wasn't going to get beat off. I mean, he was good, and I kept him because of that. You know, on a jump race, I just didn't have nothing better than he was. He just didn't have the nose. Man, when he hit, I don't know, 5 or 6, something changed. I don't know what, but he'll cold trail with every dog I got now.
So do you think? So I know you don't know exactly what, but what are your ideas as to what happened? Like, do you think he had the ability to smell? Like, was something in his mind in terms of connecting those smells, or?
You know, that's a good question. I don't think a dog can learn how to smell. You know, I think they're either born with it or they're not. So maybe it just took him getting a little older, a little mature to connect all the dots. Maybe I don't know, but it's a weird deal. I've never seen another dog that did that. You know, you see dogs that are late bloomers as far as just going track to track. But he always wanted to go track to track. It's just like he never could make the scent come out of it. So I don't know. I don't think anything changed as far as his ability to smell. I just think something changed as far as him connecting the dots. I don't know.
What are the ideal traits that you look for in a dog?
Speed. Speed for one on the bear side. I like a smaller built dog. I like that 30 to 40 pound dog, and I know you walk out there in my kennels now and think I'm sitting here lying to you because I've got several dogs that are over that, but my goal is to get a pack of dogs that are in that 30 to 40 pound range. My experience, they get around on the rocks better, they don't eat as much, their feet hold up better. I look for a dog that's got a little something between the ears, you know, if they knuckle-headed puppies, you know, and I think that's where a lot of guys give up.
How does that manifest in terms of, like, I often think about how you gauge a dog's smartness or intelligence, and it's a tough thing to do. Is it based on how they handle or how quick they pick things up?
I base it on how they handle. You know, I've got a 1.5-year-old out there that his maturity level's been outrageous. From, 4 months old, and you'd have thought he was a 4-year-old dog, you know. He's not your typical jump up on you puppy at 4 months old, you know. He just kind of wanted to go do his own thing. You tell him to go to his kennel, and he goes to his kennel. That's the sort of stuff I look for. I just like a dog with a little something between their ears.
Can you see intelligence in how a dog hunts?
I think so. You know, you get a line that goes up a ledge, dogs can't get up, and you see a lot of dogs sitting at the bottom barking.
Mhm.
And you'll get one or two dogs that are smart enough to figure out how to go around,
Mhm.
find another way up, and then they'll come back to that track on top.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think you can see it in them.
Mhm. What do you think a dog's like memory is like? Do you think they have memory in the same way that we do?
Yeah, I think so.
Mhm.
Maybe not as good,
Mhm.
but I think they remember stuff.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I don't know why they wouldn't.
Yeah. And how about the ability to like string together events like, oh, I push this thing, the gate opens. You know, how do you think that they have the ability to tie together sequential steps?
Yeah, I think they do.
Mhm.
My sister raises shepherds,
Mhm.
or not shepherd. Yeah, whatever Lassie was.
Oh, like English shepherds?
Yeah, whatever
Mhm.
Lassie was. But she's got them to where she's got this deal, and it's got different things on it, buttons, and it's got a picture of a door, a picture of a feeder, whatever. Them dogs of hers will go up and hit it with their nose or their paw if they need to go outside, and it tells her outside or feed or water or whatever. Them dogs know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I think in order to learn that, they've got to be able to put two and two together a little
Mhm.
bit.
I think it's important to know how a dog thinks, because something I've noticed with people who have pet dogs is often they sort of anthropomorphize the dog. Oh, the dog, pissed on my bed because she's jealous that, my girlfriend was in the apartment yesterday or whatever it was. And I think in order to know what you can expect from a dog, you need to know what a dog can do in terms of how does it think, what is it capable of, even to something so basic as like, can I put a dog in a crate and not expect it to shit for 8 hours? I think a lot of people don't know that you can, and you can expect that.
Oh yeah.
But once you do that, you can have an idea of, so that because you don't end up being overly harsh by misunderstanding the dog and going, oh well, I had it in the crate for 24 hours and it took a shit, so I smacked it. When that's probably an impossibility, but you can expect 5 or 6 hours or 8 hours, whatever it is.
I used to be a lot heavier handed than I am now.
Mhm.
And I'm pretty sure, have you read that Steve Matheson, The Brave?
I haven't read it, no.
I'm pretty sure that was the book it was in, but he talked about that. Why beat on them when you've got a little button?
Mhm.
And that gives them a little juice.
Mhm.
I think them dogs know you're shocking them, but I don't think they take it as hard as whipping on them. Whether I'm notorious about swatting them with my hat,
Mhm.
and I'm sure it stings a little, but that pop more than anything spooks them. But I think they take that harder
Mhm.
than that little button. And I've tried to change a lot of that over the years, and I can see a difference in my dogs as
Really?
far as, yeah.
What's the difference that you see?
Well, some dogs, and anybody that's been around the dogs enough, they know every dog's a little different. Some dogs are a little more timid than others.
Yep.
So you get them soft-hearted dogs that are just naturally soft-hearted, and you swat them one time, and anytime you get near them, they cower down,
Yeah.
Versus you shock them with that deal, and they don't ever cower down,
Mhm.
I've got a 3-year-old out there now that he's just super soft-hearted. I mean, you yell at him and he curls up in a ball, but you can shock him and it don't seem, it gets his attention for sure, but it don't seem to cower him as much as beating on him.
Yeah. Something I've noticed with beating on dogs is that it's mostly about you and it's really not about the dog. And in most of the instances I've seen and done, the dog doesn't really know why you're hitting it, unless you're right there when it does the thing.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I think that if you've got a good relationship with your dogs, a swat or shooing it with your hat or a stern word can mean as much to that dog as getting whacked.
Oh yeah.
Without maybe having as much risk to do damage. Because if you whack that dog when it was doing something right and it misunderstands why you're whacking it, then it begins to really confuse the dog, right?
Yep. And my pups, I don't shock them on a high level, but I had a guy tell me one time, every time you shock your dog, shock him on 15.
Mhm.
And then, or whatever the highest is. I don't know if I agree with that or not. I've got mixed feelings, because again, you've got these softer hearted dogs that take the juice a little better than others.
Yeah.
Got that little beagle of mine's a stubborn little shit. I mean, I can shock her on 12 and it don't seem to phase her none.
Really?
Versus some of my big dogs, you know, I shock them on 3 or 4. God, they're coming back to the truck and don't want to hunt the rest of the day.
Yeah. And you gotta know your individual dog so that you can.
Yeah.
For me, it seems like the rule of thumb is go with the lowest level you can, knowing that
Work
dog.
your way up.
But certain dogs, I don't have any dogs like this, but certain dogs I've seen, you gotta get it all the way up because they're just hard-headed.
Well, you know, if you got a pup running trash, heck yeah, fry that sucker. Let him know right away, you know, if that's bad. But if you got a dog babbling in the box, which is one of my pet peeves, I cannot stand it, drives me batty. I'm gonna start off, you know, at a medium range, 8 or 9, and hit them there. If that don't do them no good, then I'm gonna go up until it finally does get their attention. Or you know, there's a million different reasons to shock a dog, but I think if they're trashing, then heck yeah, fry their brains out.
So my dogs are pretty sensitive, and if I tone them or vibrate them or shock them, I think it affects how they hunt after that. They don't range as far for the day. You know, they get over it. But how do you navigate that in terms of not putting them off? But you know, this is something I was learning my last season with that little blue tick is she'll strike on anything from the box. She'll rig it. You know, she'll rig a deer, she'll rig a coyote, she'll rig a bear. I don't want to dissuade her from rigging bears, so I don't want to shock her off completely. But I do want her to not bark on trash.
How old is she?
She's 3.
So in my opinion, she's old enough to start shocking her off trash. Yeah, when these dogs are young, you know, year-old, 2-year-old, whatever, and they're rigging trash, and you know they're rigging trash because if your old dog ain't rigging with them, yeah, get out and scold them a bit, maybe swat them with your hat, you know, where it doesn't hurt them that bad, but tone them, you know, once they hit that 3-year-old mark, they know the difference. And that's when I go to correcting them pretty good. If you got a dog that's rigging and nothing else is rigging that you know is good, then yeah, I'd go to shocking. But again, everybody's different.
I think it seems also to be related to how much game that dog has seen. Like if it's a 1-year-old dog, but it's been on 40, 50 bear races, it knows what a bear is, and I think you can be much harsher with it. You know, I see guys writing on Facebook, should I shock this dog? And their dogs have barely been on anything. And so if they're real harsh about breaking that dog off coyotes and deer, you know, the dog might not be able to distinguish that a bear is on, but a deer is not yet. It seems to be sort of about the amount of game you get them on.
I'll agree to that. Yeah. And I've said it 2 or 3 times: the more game you show a dog, the better they're going to be.
Yeah, definitely. And so, speed, brains. What else do you look for?
Obviously, you want as cold a nosed dog as you can get, but I think a lot of that goes into the breeding. I think it's hard to tell, and obviously there's exceptions to the rules. You're going to have dogs that are 1 year old or cold trailing with your 7-year-old dogs, you know, but I think it takes them dogs a couple of years to really slow down and figure out how to cold trail. I think you can tell by training with a coon or a feral cat, you ought to be able to tell if them dogs have got the cold nosed in them or not at 1 year old. It just may take you a little bit longer to get them to slow down and actually go to trailing like they should.
How do you like a dog to be built? Are there any sort of physical traits that you look for in a dog? Or
Just that smaller size, like
just smaller.
And I, especially now that we're hunting in the dirt a lot more, I think we're gonna go to docking on all our tails.
Really?
Puppies, yeah.
Why? Because what's happening?
Well, they're cold trailing and their tail's going 100 miles an hour, and by the end of the day, they're bleeding like stuck pigs.
Because it's whacking on branches and stuff?
Cactus and rocks and everything.
That happens when they're trailing slowly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and you don't see it much on a bear race, but when they're cold trailing wide, you see it a lot. Feet. I like a good tight-footed dog. Because obviously this country we're in, we're either fighting rocks or we're fighting crusty snow or ice. Or
So describe what that looks like.
I like a tighter footed dog, a smaller foot. You know, I used to think a pink footed dog wasn't as tough footed as a black footed dog, but I'll disagree with that now.
Really?
Yeah, and there'll be a lot of guys that are gonna disagree with me on that. But I've got some dogs out there that are pink footed. They're just as tough as my other dogs are.
So when you say tight-footed dog, do you mean that the pads are close together?
Yeah,
And
it's
small feet?
Smaller foot.
Yeah.
And you know, in theory, that doesn't make any sense as to why that would hold up bigger than a bigger foot would. Or better than a bigger foot would. You'd think that bigger foot would put more surface pressure, so the PSI or whatever you want to call it is less. But it seems like the bigger the foot is, the worse trouble you have. Those smaller footed dogs, my beagle, you know, her feet ain't an inch in diameter, and she don't have hardly any foot trouble.
Really? Yeah.
Down in that southern part she does, that Malapi's, I think you'd run the hooves off of a horse down there. It's
Really? Yeah. What level of training do you feel like what do you like on a hound? What level of training do you do with your hounds outside of the hunting training, so like a handle?
You know, I experimented a little bit. I don't even remember what it was called, but the military does it. The day them pups are born, you get them out and you turn them upside down, you take a feather and tickle their feet. You put a cold wash, you get a cold wet wash rag and you stick them on that and you hold them there for so many seconds. And I don't remember what all it was. You hold them upside down. It desensitizes them. And honestly, I couldn't tell that big of a difference in it.
Really?
Some people say they can't. Obviously, the military thinks they can. Becky thinks it's good.
Yeah.
I personally didn't see a big difference in it. I just think the more you handle these pups at a young age, the better off they're going to handle for you.
Yeah.
Just let them tag along with you, run around the yard with you. We got a creek up the hill here. I take mine up to the creek a couple times a week and let them run around that creek. I think some of the best dogs I've ever seen, and I can't do it here. I don't have enough ground, but let these pups run loose till they're 6 or 8 months old. Let them chase rabbits and deer and mice and squirrels. And if it runs, let them chase it. Yeah, you're gonna have a hard time getting them trash broke, but by God, it makes them gamey.
Yeah.
And that's some of the best dogs I've ever seen, and were raised like that. But yeah, I like a dog with a good handle. About every dog I got out there in my kennels right now, you know, I'll let them out in my dog yard and clean kennels, or just let them out a couple times a week during the off season to run around. About every dog I got out there, I can call them and tell them to go to their kennel, and they'll go straight in their kennel, turn around and look at me and wait for us to shut the gate. I think that's a learned trait. They see the other dogs doing it, and I think they pick up on it pretty quick. You know, I hunted with a guy that had such a good handle on his, he could just call him off a tree right before he shot a bear or a lion. And that makes a lot of sense. And I can pull most of mine off a tree, call them off. Some of the old dogs I can't, but most of my young dogs I've got where I can call them off a tree. But this guy, he was a government hunter. He'd get ready to shoot a bear or a lion. He'd say good enough, and all them dogs would come stand behind him and wait till he pulled the trigger. That took some handling.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
It seems like that's an important thing to train in terms of getting dogs. I don't know about that level, that's really impressive, but certainly getting, you know, if you want to leave that bear line in the tree and leave the tree, to be able to do it without having a mess of leashes, and because that's probably the most dangerous situation when you're out hunting, is when you're on a steep incline and you're pulling 4 dogs and they're going crazy in different directions. So
I hate leaving dogs. There ain't nothing in the world I hate worse than leaving dogs.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've got 90% of mine where I can call them off a tree. I may have to tone them a little,
Mhm.
but I can get most everything off a tree. The only time I have any trouble is if a tree's a real low tree, you know,
Mhm.
and it's right in their face. That gets a little tough, but a bay up's pretty tough to call them off of. But,
Mhm.
if it's in a big pine, I can normally call them.
Yeah, I like that part where you go running down the hill with all the dogs screaming your head off to get them to follow you. For me, that's fun. I definitely enjoy that. So, what? Oh, can't barely read my own handwriting.
Mine's the same way.
What's the coolest thing that you've seen when you've been out in the mountains or just in nature in general? Or just some cool things?
You know, we killed a bear this year that was missing a front foot. He had one toe. It's all he had on that front foot. And I thought it might have been from a trap or a fight or something, but when we went to check that bear in, he had ear tags, and the tags were gone. And the bear was pretty old, you can tell by his teeth, and that game warden said that there was a fire in that country 13 years ago, and a bunch of them bears got burned up, or all them animals did, and they darted them and took them to town to a vet, and they amputated a bunch of them feet
Oh, really? Wow.
and limbs and whatever. And you could actually take that foot and pull the hair back, and it actually did look like it was surgically removed.
At what? At the edge of the pad? Really interesting.
Well, it was all the way, and I've got pictures I can show you, but basically they took everything off. I think would have been his outside, and that whole pad was pretty well gone, all but that one outside nail. So that was pretty neat.
And he'd just been living like that for 13 years?
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
He was a giant too.
Was he in good shape?
Oh yeah, big old fat sucker. We fought that bear for 3 days, and he kept trying to go to the Hickory Indian Reservation. We'd get to the fence line, and I'd have to pull dogs off before we could get him killed. Finally, the third day, I caught him coming the right way, and we just got him shut down and killed him on the ground, laid up. I mean, it had a good foot, but I still thought, that sucker ought to be able to climb, until we got him killed and realized that there was no way he was only going to be able to climb with one foot.
Really?
Yeah, he couldn't have climbed the tree.
Could you see in the pad, could you see in the track that his front foot was messed up?
Knowing what I know now, I probably could have. But when we cut his track, I just see that one good foot, and I never would, that's a good bear, we need to catch him, He did have a good foot on one side. I don't know, I'll have to think about that one some more.
What's an awful thing that you've seen in nature? I've seen some pretty gnarly stuff, and I think it's unfortunate side of life that's out there. What's some of the rough stuff you've seen?
I don't know. I found where Tom had killed some kittens one time. Big old Tom lion killed a pair of kittens. And, they'll do that to get that female to come back in the cycle. And just to crush them kittens' head and leave them laying there by that pond for no reason other than to try to breed that bitch again was pretty rough. Just a waste, It was a little Tom kitten and a little female kitten. And, I was free casting dogs and off in a big nasty canyon and found it, but I don't know. That's probably one of the bad things, but that's just part of nature.
Yeah.
It's just one of them.
Yeah, that's something that I think we also need to get out there, is that there's suffering and cruelty. I don't know if it's cruelty, but there's certainly suffering implicit in nature, and us, creating some degree of suffering with the hound hunting in order to do a good, I think, which is we're harvesting these animals for the good and also loving it for the dogs. I think a lot of people have an idea that nature is sort of fun and fantastic, and it is those things.
Disney movie.
Yeah, and it is, but it's also sometimes awful.
Yeah. I don't know about Idaho, but here, y'all even have porcupines in Idaho?
We found out yesterday. I think they do have porcupines, but not where I've been. I've never seen them in the area where I hunt.
So we've got them here. You know, I don't know if I've ever skinned a lion, but I didn't find a porcupine quill in front legs.
Really?
Every lion I've ever skinned, you're gonna find a couple in them somewhere.
Okay.
They love them here. And Steve Mathis talks about that a little bit in his book. He's seen where a porcupine had been going down the road dragging his quills, you know. Seen the lion tracks come into the road, fall on him. And then he said you could see that lion just reached around and flipped that porcupine on their belly, gutted them. And I found that. You'll find a pile of guts, and then you'll find that. I mean, me and you couldn't skin a porcupine that good. And you could wear it as a hat. I mean, they'll skin that sucker just.
Do you think they skin it with their claws, or they're just eating it out?
No, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if they're peeling him or if they're just eating it out of that deal, but man, they sure do a good job of getting him cleaned up. But
yeah, it looks like it would be hard to eat. I killed a porcupine yesterday, and I was going to stab it, and I was like, I didn't even want to stab it without getting spines in my hand, you know. So I don't know. I feel like they must have to skin it out with their paw.
I would think, yeah. But again, I don't know if they just eat, because once they get him turned over, you know, they can't get no quills in them from there. Once they get him gutted, I don't know if they just eat it out or what, but we find that quite a bit. But we caught and killed a tom. It's been, it was in May, 2 years ago, I guess. Pretty nice tom. And God, he was super thin. I mean, skin and bone. A friend of mine was with me, and he shot it and killed it. When he hit the ground, I figured out why. I found quills in his short ribs. I found quills in the back of his throat. He was just, I think he would have died. But that was kind of neat. But
were they festering recent?
Oh yeah, they you know, I would say within 2 weeks. But when we skinned him, you could see them going through his ribs, and they were turning green, infected. But in the back of his throat, they were all over. But I think that probably would have killed that lion.
Well, my dog got into it with one yesterday because I don't think they know what they are, and she found out really quick. But we pulled, I don't know, it felt like over 100 spines out of her, and you know, all out of her mouth and back of her throat. And I was wondering, what do you think happens to a coyote or a wolf or a lion if they get? I mean, you sort of answered it already, but if they get on the wrong side of the porcupine.
So them quills just keep going.
Yeah.
So wherever they start, they'll work their way all the way through. I've got an old healer that goes everywhere with me. He's 12. I was rodent dogs, I don't know, it's been 5 or 6 years ago, up a dry wash, and they all tore out and had a porcupine caught. He was in on it. God, we pulled quills for days. I ended up taking some dogs to the vet over it. Bad deal. I pulled as many out of him as I could. I don't know, a couple weeks later, I was at work, and my wife called me and said, there's a stick in Red's eye. I said, a stick? She said, yeah. I said, well, take him to the vet. She loads him up, takes him to the vet. By the time she gets there, takes him in. The guy said, there ain't nothing in his eye. Vet does. All right, bring him home. Vet thinking she's crazy, you know, and I'm thinking she's crazy. 2 or 3 days later, I got to noticing he was pretty soft mouth, having a hard time eating. I opened his mouth, and he had a quill coming out in his mouth. And I'm not so sure that wasn't a quill. It came out of his eye. And by the time she got to the vet, he had got it out. But them things just, and he's pretty well blind now, but at the time, I mean, he healed up. I'm sure it affected his vision. Them things just keep going through, you know. Knock on wood, I've never had a dog die from it, but I know guys that have.
Really? Well, shit, I gotta go check this dog again later.
Yeah, we'll bring her in.
But it's incredible. I shove my hand down her throat, and I'm pulling, you know, heaps of them out of the throat, and I'm like, how did they even get there? But they just keep working backwards.
Yeah.
And that dog was freaking out and screaming, and I sort of have a feeling that if she was out there, just a feral dog got into a porcupine, that'd be it for her.
Probably, if they were that far down the throat.
Yeah.
Best thing I found for them is just dose them up on antibiotic. And give them a good 10-day dose of antibiotic.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's about all you can do.
What are some of the cooler stories you have with your dogs?
Oh, I don't know. Kind of had a weird deal this year. We'd killed a bear early one morning and went into some country we hadn't hunted that last year. Bear tracks all over this road, and it was late in the day, 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Thought, well, we'll walk some dogs off into this canyon. One of my guys volunteered to take some dogs off through there. He gets down through there, and dogs split and kind of go everywhere. And he said there was bear sign all over the place. And this one dog kind of comes around on his own, gets about 125 yards from the road, and I can hear him barking. So I think he's bayed. It wasn't my dog, it was one of my other guy's dogs. I said, well, send some to him. So I dumped, 3 or 4 dogs to him. All my dogs get there, hit, treat. So I walk in there, I get, 60 yards from the tree, and I can see a bear in the tree, so I go back to try to get the hunter. Get on the radio, tell my guides, hey, we got one caught over here, everybody come over here. We all get down there, and there's 2 bears in the tree, 2 mature bears. Mm-hmm. And it was a sow and a boar. And we're looking and looking, and it's like, we're sure, they're both mature, and the sow with a big cub. Well, I had some dogs trying to win back up the hill. They'd go up on the hill and like they were winning, but they'd come back to the tree right away, and we looked all around, couldn't see nothing. Trees are pretty close. Tree, me to the wall, I guess, 15 feet. So one of my guys walks up on the hill to see if he could find some cubs in a tree or whatever. We couldn't find nothing. Well, I'm leaning against this tree, looking at this 2 bears in the tree. My guy says, look up. And I said, I am looking up. He goes, no, look at the tree you're leaning against. Mm-hmm. Turn around and look, and there's a sow and 2 cubs. Mm-hmm. In the same tree I'm leaning against. We had 5 bear caught within 15 feet.
Really?
Well, that was kind of a neat deal.
Well, what do you think happened?
I just think there was so much feed in that canyon. All them bear were congregated right there. They'd found a cool place to lay it.
Yep.
We bayed that dog bayed one, either that big sow or that boar one, into that little drainage, because there was bear beds all up and down that little drainage. It was a little drainage, and he walked that bear up through that drainage, and all them other bear were laying there asleep, and they just all climbed the tree right there together.
Yeah, got right out of their beds.
Freak deal.
Yeah, that was cool.
We, I don't know, I think it was the next day, killed a bear that morning, went back that evening, started a bear, ended up off in a big nasty canyon down by the Chalmer River. We get there, it was like a 2-mile hike, 2.5 mile hike, pretty rugged, nasty. My rope got brought out for that. Mm-hmm. Get down in there, and luckily my hunter was a special forces guy, so he was in shape and could move. Get down there and kill this bear with like 10 minutes of legal shooting light left, and go walking out of there. We get into that nasty stuff, and I was like, it ain't worth it. We're gonna have to drag dogs over ledges, and then we're gonna have to climb over ledges in the dark. It just ain't worth it. So we ended up spending the night down in that canyon. And I know to some guys that may not be a big deal. For us, we got roads everywhere. We don't have to do that very often. But, Hunter thought it was pretty neat.
Yeah. What time of year was that?
That was mid-October, so it was getting.
It can
cool.
be chilly.
Oh, yeah. I left the truck in a long sleeve t-shirt and a vest. Yeah. So we got us a pretty good fire going. We didn't get very far from it all night.
No, I bet you didn't sleep much.
No, it was a long night.
Yeah.
More hungry than anything.
Yep. Awesome, man. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
That was great. That was excellent.